Today's lesson is 2-T for translations. Our objectives, or what we want to be able to do, is write a verbal sentence as an algebraic equation, and then we want to write an algebraic equation as a verbal sentence.
Okay, what we're going to cover today deals with operation words that we commonly use. So we've given you this sheet to use at home as you take these notes, and please make sure you have it with you when you come to class tomorrow, because it will help you not just with your notes today, but it will also help you when you go to do that assignment that we're going to give you tomorrow. Basically, this is your little cheat sheet. We're looking at words that mean operations. So for addition, you have the words add, sum, increase by, together, more, and, plus, and combined. These are all words that you've heard before. We just want to make sure that you're aware that those are words that relate to addition. You have your subtraction words, subtract, difference, decrease by, and minus. I'll come back to these turnaround words in a moment. You have division, so you have quotient, shared, per, ratio, and divided by. And then you have multiplication, product, times, of, multiple, and twice. For your equal sign, we're going to use words like is, are, were, and will be. You'll also see is identical to, and probably is the same thing as. Parentheses words, and we'll talk more about this in our examples, but just know that parentheses words are going to be things like twice the sum or difference of, twice the sum or difference of a number in something, and times the sum or difference of something. Turnaround words, you just have to be aware of turnaround words like than, as in less than, more than, from, and fewer, because they're going to actually flip-flop the order that the numbers are going to appear in a sentence. So if you say the sentence 3 less than 9, it doesn't mean 3 minus 9. It means 3 less than 9. So you have to write the 9 first, and then you're going to take 3 away from that.
Our first example says the difference of 3 times m and twice n is identical to 18. Take a minute, make sure you get the example written down before you move on. So take a minute right now and pause the video and write down the example. All right, we're going to take this apart piece by piece. The first thing we're going to look at is the difference of. The word difference means that we're going to subtract, so we're going to go ahead and write our subtraction symbol. Then 3 times m is 3, we write that as 3m. And twice n. Twice, if I say I walked from here to the door twice, that means I walked there 2 times. So you're going to write that as 2 times n, or 2n. Is identical to means I'm going to write my equal sign. Identical to means equals, and then 18. So my algebraic equation is 3m minus 2n equals 18. Take a minute again, make sure you have the problem and the answer both written before you move on. Number 2 says the sum of 2/3 b and 12 is equal to twice b. Again, make sure and pause the video now and write down the example before you move on. Alright, the sum of means we're going to add, so we're going to go ahead and write down our addition symbol. Then we're going to look at 2/3 b, and we're going to write that as 2 over 3b. And 12, so we're going to add 2 over 3b, or 2 over 3b, and we're going to add 12 to that, so plus 12 is equal to, is just your equal sign, and then twice b. Again, if I say I walk from here to the door twice, that means I walk there 2 times. So that's 2 times b. So 2b. So my equation is 2 over 3b plus 12 equals 2b. Again, make sure you have the problem and the answer both written down before you move on. Number 3 says the cube of 3 decreased by the square of h is 11.
And just to correct, that was the cube of g decreased by the square of h is 11. So go ahead and pause the video and get that one down. we're going to write this. The cube of g, cube signifies an exponent of 3, so we're going to say g to the third power, decreased by, that shows that we're subtracting, the square of h, square signifies an exponent of 2, so h squared, the square of h, is, that is just our equal sign, 11, the number 11. So it's g to the third minus h squared equals 11. Make sure that you have both of these written down before you move on to the next slide, please.
Number 4, 5 times the sum of x and y is equal to 3 times z.
Pause the video for just a moment and make sure that you get this written down before you move on.
All right, 5 times the sum is going to be those parenthesis words, because we're not saying 5 times x or 5 times y. We're saying 5 times the sum of those two things added together. So we're going to say 5 and then your parentheses. The sum of means we're going to have an addition symbol in those parentheses, and we're adding x and y. So 5 parentheses x plus y is equal to, again, is just your equal sign. And then 3 times z is written as 3z. So I have 5 parentheses x plus y parentheses equals 3z. Again, make sure you have both of these written down before you move on. Number 5 says 1/2 the sum of 6 and k equals k plus 14. And go ahead and pause the video and make sure you have the problem written down before you move on. Right, first thing we're going to look at is 1/2 the sum. We're not saying half of 6 or half of k, we're saying 1/2 the sum. So we're going to need parentheses with this one. So we're going to have 1/2 and then parentheses with the plus sign in the middle because it's half of the sum. Sum means to add. 6 and k means I'm adding 6 and k. Equals is just again your equal sign, and then k plus 14 is just that, k plus 14. So our equation is 1/2 parentheses 6 plus k parentheses equals k plus 14. Again, make sure you have both of these written down before you move on. Number 6, the quotient of b and c is identical to 4 more than twice the difference of b and c.
Take a moment, make sure that you have that written down before you move on. Pause the video now.
All right, this one's really wordy, but again, we're going to take it apart piece by piece. First of all, it says the quotient of b and c. So quotient means to divide. So we're going to write this as b over c. And we want you to go ahead and write that as a fraction, because a fraction bar is just division. So we're going to say b over c. Is identical to is just another way of saying equals. 4 more than. Here's the more than word that Ms. Fulton talked about being a turnaround word. 4 more than means we're adding 4 to the end of something. So we're going to put plus 4 at the end. And we're adding 4 to twice the difference. So we're going to need parentheses, 2 parentheses, because twice is 2. And we're saying twice the difference and not twice b or twice c. So that's why we need the parentheses there. There's a subtraction sign in the middle because of the word difference, and we're going to subtract b and c. So b over c equals 2 parentheses b minus c parentheses plus 4. Again, make sure you have both of these written down before you move on. Number 7, 1/5 of a number plus 3 equals the product of 7 and the number. Yeah, make sure, take a minute, pause, and get this written down before you move on. Right, 1/5 of a number is 1 over 5 n, or 1/5 times n, which we write as 1/5 n.
You see the of there can be used to indicate multiplication. You don't have to write that down. We just want you to be aware of that.
plus 3 is just that, plus 3. Equals is your equal sign. The product means that I'm multiplying, so I'm going to have a dot, and it's 7 and the number, and it's the same number as before, so we're still going to use the n. So it's 7 times n, which could also be written as just 7n. Make sure you have both of these written down before you move on. Number 8, 3 less than the quotient of 20 and m is 2. Again, take a minute, pause the video, and write down the question. All right, 3 less than. Again, less than is a turnaround word. It means we're taking 3 away from something. So we're going to put minus 3 at the end. The quotient means that we are dividing. So I'm going to use my fraction bar again to show division. I'm dividing 20 and m, so I'm going to say 20 over m. Is equals to, and it's equal to 2. So 20 over m minus 3 equals 2. Again, make sure you have both of these written down before you move on. There's our first objective. So you should now be able to write a verbal sentence as an algebraic equation. Our next example, we're going to switch those, and we're going to start with the algebraic equation and write it as a verbal sentence. Now, there's many different words that you can use for each one of the operations. However, make sure that you write down the exact way that we do the examples. It will help you tomorrow when we do the assignment.
All right, so the first problem we're going to look at here is 3n minus 4 equals 11. And again, like we just said, there are multiple ways that you could write this out, but we want you to go ahead and get down the example that we're going to give you. However, I will tell you that as you write these number words, you can abbreviate that by putting in the actual number. Instead of spelling out 3, you can write the number 3. All right, so let's look at the first part, 3n. Again, when we have a letter and a number and they're touching, they're being multiplied. So we write that as the product of 3 and a number. So you can go ahead and write the product of the numeral 3 there and a number. And that number could be any variable. For this purpose, it's obviously n. Then you have minus 4. We show that by saying decreased by 4 equals 11. And we have is 11. Make sure that you have this written down in the same wording that is written on the slide before you move on to the next slide. All right, number 10, you have b to the exponent of 3 plus 15 equals 24. Make sure that you have this example written down. Let's break that apart. We have the plus sign in the middle, and we're going to say the sum of a number cubed, and 15 equals 24. The sum of a number cubed and 15 equals 24. And again, you can write the number 15 and 24 there instead of having to spell those out. Take a moment and make sure that you have this written down before you move on to the next slide. Okay, number 11, you have 3 over 5 c minus 1 over 10 equals c. Lots of fractions going on here. We know that you love fractions. We're going to write this by saying 3/5 of a number. 3/5 of a number, please spell that out. 3/5, please spell that out, of a number. And it says there again at the bottom, and again, you don't have to write that. Of can be used to indicate multiplication. Less 1/10. Less 1/10 just shows that we're taking away 1/10 from 3/5 of a number. Is equal to that number. And that number, again, signifies that we are using the same number that we used up here. So we have a number and that number, so that's why we see C appearing twice. It doesn't say a different number. Take a moment and make sure that you get that down. You can pause the video before you move on. All right, W over 4 plus 3 equals 15. Write that down before continuing on. We're looking at an addition problem, and we've written this here by saying 3 more than, so that's a turnaround word there, 3 more than the quotient of a number and 4. Again, that number could be any number, but we've chosen W for that random number, that variable. The quotient of a number and 4 is equal to 15. Make sure that you have this written down before you move on to the next slide.
All right, number 13. Again, make sure you have this written down. 5 parentheses F plus G parentheses equals 7F minus 3. We're first of all going to look at the part with the parentheses, and we're going to write that as the product of 5 and the sum of F and G. The product of 5 and the sum of F and G. Then we have our equal sign, and we're going to say equals. For 7F, we're going to say the product of 7 and F. And then for minus 3, we're going to say minus 3. Again, make sure you have this written down before you move on to the next slide. Number 14 says 27 equals 2, parentheses, y plus z, parentheses. Again, make sure you have this written down before you move on. So we're going to start with the 27, and we're just going to write that as 27, or you can just write the number 27. The equal sign, we're going to say equals. Now we come to the tricky part with the parentheses. We're going to say twice the sum. Twice again means 2 times, and it's 2 times the sum. That's where the parentheses come in. And it's the sum of y and z. So 27 equals twice the sum of y and z. Again, make sure you have this written down before you move on to the next slide. Alright, so there's our second objective. We should now be able to go from algebraic equation and write it as a verbal sentence.
All right. Thank you for watching the video, and we will complete your homework assignment over this in class tomorrow.